Hello, excellent people. I am Charles Beatty, and this is Aimed at Excellence. So it's Sunday, May the 30th, and I promised you a video this weekend continuing on our process with the Dreams into Action process. This is not that video. I actually am going to be doing this video is going to be a bit more of a musing kind of video. So I competed in a jujitsu competition yesterday, and it was very good in some ways and not as good as I'd hoped in other ways. And there's been a lot of talk since then between myself and my wife, myself and some of my teammates. And I want to share some of my kind of like some of the ideas that I have been developing in the interim since that competition yesterday, because I think they are relevant to this project. So first of all, if you haven't been watching my videos, or if I haven't mentioned it in the ones that you've seen, I've been training in jiu-jitsu for 7 or so years. In my first 3 years of jiu-jitsu, I competed quite often, probably anywhere from like 6 to 10 times a year. I was competing, and the people that I was training with at the time, it was a part of the culture, so we were going to competitions fairly regularly as a team or as individuals. And then when I moved back to Tennessee, I have not been competing. So it's been 4 years since the last time that I competed. And this is a good test for me because I haven't competed. A, I have not competed in 4 years. B, I have not competed at the skill level that I was competing at over this weekend, because I've gotten, considerably better in the 4 years since. And so I was no longer eligible to compete at the tier that I had competed at in the past. So the big thing that I want to just sort of jump right into is why I train jiu-jitsu at all, because it's an interesting question that I think that, at some point when I get around to interviewing the folks at my club, I'd really like to kind of ask people why they train, because there's a couple of reasons that seem fairly common, and my reasons are not, or until this weekend, my reasons were sometimes not that clear, because people do it for competition, like for the same reason they do other like MMA type martial arts. They do it because it's competitive, it's challenging. People do it for sort of self-defense, although I think that while jiu-jitsu is relevant to self-defense, the longer you stay in jiu-jitsu, the less relevant it is for self-defense, because the more you become conditioned to defending against other jiu-jitsu players and not defending against actual violence in the real world. But that's probably a story for a different day. The big reason being it becomes more and more sport and less self-defense, unless you're training at a place that's very, very focused on the self-defense applications. So, and that's not where I train, and I've never trained in a place like that makes self-defense the first priority. So one thing that I noticed recently, I had a fella come down from, I think he's in Michigan, correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, but his name is Carl Wellborn. He's a very nice guy. He came and visited the area about maybe a month ago now, and he hung out for a couple of days and rolled with a bunch of us. Very, very nice guy. Really enjoyed his company. And one of the things that I told him when he and I were talking was that, because he's relatively new to jiu-jitsu, and I think he's been doing it for maybe a year or two at the most. And I told him, I was like, people come in for all manner of reasons. They start for all manner of reasons, but they stay for the community. And that's really very true. It's one of the coolest things where, like, I have this thing that I do that I can quite literally travel anywhere in the world, and I can hop online and I can find a jiu-jitsu club, and I can have a brand new best friend in that place because of jiu-jitsu. I can find people to train with and play with and meet, and I may not even speak their language, but I can be like, hey, look, I'm in town traveling as a tourist. Can you recommend some insider places that I should go? You want to go grab a drink? You want to hang out? Or let's say you're new to town and you're like, hey, I don't have any friends. I don't know anybody. The first thing I would do is I'd go to the jiu-jitsu club and I would tell people, I am brand new to town. Can I hang out with you? Right? And it's a good way to get to know people, because you already have this really, really intimate connection, because jiu-jitsu is extremely intimate. You get really up close and personal with people, like physically, and then you put each other in harm's way, and then you refuse to harm them even though you could. Like, that's one of the things that's really strange, and it's hard to wrap your head around if you haven't done it. So, jujitsu is a submission grappling martial art. And so the whole game revolves around getting the person to a point where they have to submit, they tap, and they say, they say tap, or they submit in whatever verbal way they want to, or they tap you, because you're A, going to choke them unconscious, or B, going to damage one of their limbs in a way that they know is going to be damaging. So they say, I submit, you stop. But you don't have to, technically. I mean, if you consistently didn't, you would not be welcome in that gym. But in that moment, you don't have to stop. The only thing stopping you is you. And there's a camaraderie that comes from knowing you could have killed that person and didn't, and knowing that person could have killed you and didn't. And there's just a lot of, it's an interesting thing. So the companionship is a big part of it. The community is a big part of it. So all of this is kind of background, because my personal reason for doing this has become more and more clear, and especially in the past couple of years of running my business and having just a lot going on in my life. I don't do this for self-defense. I don't do this for I don't do this for competition. I do it because it's fun. And in particular, I do it because not only is it fun, but it's actually stress relieving for me. I go to the gym and I play and I flow, and I get to be creative. And I may be one of the more creative people at my gym as far as how I play. I know I'm one of the more open people at the gym as far as how I play, where I'll go anywhere, I'll let you have anything you want. Some of that's a skill factor, some of that's I know more than some of the people at my gym, but not all of it's skill. It's definitely a personality thing. And that creativity and that flow and that relax and that sort of like, it's my stress relief thing, that's really truly why I'm there. That and the community. Like I said, community is a big factor. But going to this competition was really enlightening, because it showed me that I'm not missing anything. I do not plan. I think that I might try to compete once a year for the next little while, next number of years, just to kind of keep myself sharp and just to kind of check in on my skill set. But one thing in particular that stood out to me today was that, or not today, yesterday, was that there's a level of competition now that I have reached as far as skill, where the guys who I'm competing against are serious about competing. So I did some prep, not a lot. Like, honestly, really not a lot. I did some prep. I had some guys that I trained with. We did some, more focused training, but it was, once a week, if that. And the guys who I'm competing against at my skill level are no longer people who are kind of still learning the ropes of jujitsu and also going to the competitions to test themselves. Now it's the guys who are like, no, I've been doing this for 5 to 10 years. I know my game. I know how to win. I want to win. I'm here to win. I'm going to train in the gym to win. And it shows. I mean, there's a different level of mind that they have than what I have. They're there. They are in the gym during the week for a different reason than me. And that's really worth knowing. And I guess it gets into, I'm 8 minutes and 45 seconds into this video now, and I had hoped to be at this point that I'm at now at about 2 minutes, but I'm not very good at being short-winded. I want to be true to why I train. And if why I train is for stress relief, for a creative outlet, for fun, and for community, then I don't need to be bent out of shape about how I did at competition. So I don't know if I mentioned this, I guess I didn't. I had 2 different brackets that I competed in. And in the first bracket, I went 1 and 2, so 1 win and 2 losses. And in the second bracket, I had 1 win and 3 losses. So, I was a little bit disappointed, because I went in as the highest skilled person in my gym. So I was representing my gym as the top guy. Not that I am the top guy in the gym, but of the competitors, I was the top level of our competitors. And so, I was kind of in a very unofficial sense, I was a bit of a team captain kind of thing. And I kind of wanted to win for them. I wanted to set an example of, okay, your top guy is going to go in and he's going to kick ass and he's going to make all y'all look good and he's going to bring you up with him, right? And it's a bit of a fantasy that I'm kind of creating in my own mind because nobody put that pressure on me except me. At no point did anyone, none of the coaches, none of my teammates, ever come to me and say, Charles, we're depending on you. But it's one of those things where we do this to ourselves anyway, inadvertently. So I don't know. What you're kind of hearing, and that's why I opened this video by saying it's a bit of a musing one. Is I'm kind of sorting through a lot of this out loud here because it's emotionally complicated to compete, and it's definitely emotionally complicated to compete and not win. If I had gone out there and I had gone 7-0, right? If I had won every single match and I'd gotten double gold, this video would look very different. It would look very, very different. And that's an interesting thing to reflect upon. What would this video be if I had gone 7-0? Maybe I'll make that video as a total hypothetical where I'll be like, oh my God, I won 7-0. Check out my gold medals. I'm going to start competing all the time again. Whatever. But that's another that actually leads me to an interesting thing is I mean, I'm skilled. I'm a competent athlete. I'm smart. I'm disciplined. I could go out there and say, I want to be the top competitor in my region. Or hell, I want to be the top competitor in the game. And I could go and I could make that my focus and give me about 3 years. And I guarantee you I could be a contender. I'm not saying I could be, the number one guy in the world in 3 years, but I could be an active contender in 3 years if I made that my focus. But I don't want that life. I really don't. I see those guys and I see their lifestyles, and it's not enviable to me. I'm not saying that they don't have good lives, because I'm sure some of them do, but it's not the life that I want. And so this is where I guess this is actually going to tie really, really well into this dreams into action, process, because one of the big parts that I'm going to focus on eventually in this dreams into action thing is having to choose, right? Having to choose between this thing and this thing. You can't have everything. You can't have both. You can have a few different things, right? If you look at your life and I have a handful of dreams. You might have, I've been sharing some of my dreams with you. Let's just say you've got 10. Well, you can execute on 3 of those, maybe, depending on how complicated and how hard they are. And that's a lot of people will speak to, this is what adulthood is, right? When you are a child, you have countless dreams and countless possibilities, but then as an adult, you have to set aside more and more and more and more of those and become more and more focused on the specific ones that are most important to you. And that's where being the top level jujitsu competitor is not a dream that I want to execute on. The only part of me that wants that is a lot is a prideful, shallow part of me who just wants the accolades or the knowing that I'm the best or whatever. And that part of me is not in charge. Let's put it that way. That part of me is an important voice among the many that, are in our heads, but it's not an important enough voice. I'm not going to go and make decisions based on that voice. So anyhow, bringing this back to kind of the lessons learned from yesterday, I think that I really enjoyed the camaraderie with my team. So we went as a team, and I told people in advance, it's the only reason I'm going is because the team is going, because I think we had 6 or 7 competitors, including myself, maybe 8. We had fewer than 10 and more than 5. And we had a good number of people who were there in a support role, who were not competing, but came by to either coach or just cheer on. And that was really, really cool. That actually felt really good. That was a really good community building event, because we often only see each other in the gym, and it's really good to see people outside the gym. It's so it. I'm really glad I went with the team, and I wouldn't have gone alone. I have been to tournaments in the past where I was not competing with teammates, like alongside teammates, and I never enjoyed them. In fact, that's something that's worth noting. So let's actually take a moment and talk about what was my actual goal going to the tournament, right? So I just told you that I went 1-2 and 1-3. And I did not disclose for you that my actual goal for competition was not to win. My actual goal was to roll as in train, as in roll is the term we use for fight because it's not a fight. My goal was to roll with the same level of poise at the competition that I roll with every day of the week in the gym. That was my only goal because I've had very real tournament anxiety in the past. I've had very real disappointment with my performance in the past, not because of wins and losses, but because of not feeling like I was myself. I felt like, in the past I have had performances where I just did very poorly, not because my opponent was better, but just because I got in my own way. And so my goal was to go out there and roll with the same poise that I roll with in the gym. Because in the gym, like I said, I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm flowing, I'm having fun. I'm not that concerned about winning and losing. Don't misunderstand, I'm not giving away victories to my opponents, but I'm definitely not like getting bent out of shape if I don't win. And so that was my actual goal. And I did, in fact, succeed greatly with that goal. There was only one moment in 7 matches where I did not have my poise. Well, okay, there's two things. There are two things that happen to me that disappoint me. Thing number one is one of my opponents, and this is the guy who won gold in both brackets. This guy was very, very good, very, very disciplined, very, very intelligent. Like there's even I admired the hell out of his grappling. He was very good, and he deserved the double gold. He was better than me. Period. Um, I ran out of gas against him in my second match. So I rolled against him in both brackets, and in the second match, I ran out of gas. So he literally, and I'm in pretty good shape, and that's what disappointed me is I need, if I'm going to compete, to have enough gas in the tank to make it 5 minutes with full energy, with full activity, and I ran out of gas about 4 minutes in. He just was too good, and I was trying too hard to beat him, and I ran out of steam. So that was disappointing because I would like to not have that happen. And then the second thing that happened is against a different opponent, I got into a position and I didn't recognize the position. And that's very unusual because as a part of playing a very open game, I always, except for this, know where I am. Whether I'm winning or losing, I know where I am. And I know where I am, so I know how to maneuver in the space. I know where the threats are coming from. I know how to get out, etc. Well, he got me in a position, and the way we entered it was not through the normal route, and that's the key. That's why I was confused. And I didn't know where I was, and I didn't respond accordingly, and I lost to him because I was not properly oriented. And so that, for me, was a lack of poise, although it was a relatively benign, it was a well, it was not the same as losing my head. It was just I didn't know where I was, and that was surprising and disappointing. So, but other than those two things, the anxiety of tournament was extremely minimal. So frankly, up until stepping on the mat, it was not much. And actually, there was a bit of little, increased heart rate right before they call my name, and then once I'm on the mat, it was gone. And that was awesome because in the past, that has not been the case. In the past, I have had matches where I've gone in there and I'm like, freaking out the whole time. I'm, about to throw up beforehand, about to throw up afterwards, and it's just like, when will this day end? I don't even want to compete anymore, right? So I'm really happy with that. I'm really, really happy with that. And that right there actually may be the reason that I continue to compete once a year, is just to keep checking my mental state. Not so much to be like, okay, am I at a level now where I'm ready to start taking tournaments seriously? It's more a matter of, that was a good mental edge where, especially because I have a history of going to these things and not performing all that well mentally, this was, okay, Charles, how much have you grown mentally in 4 years since the last time you competed? How much have you grown mentally in 6 years since the first time you competed, or 6.5 years since the first time you competed? So my first competition was miserable. I got beat handily. I think I had 5 matches and I got beat handily in all 5. And I got my elbow just like badly injured in one of them. And I had like 6 months worth of elbow range of motion limitation and pain because of that injury. And it was terrible and I hated it. And I was like, I am never doing this again. This was stupid. And then, of course, I competed again because I couldn't stand for that to have been my only experience, for that to have been the one time I ever competed, right? So I had to go back into that space that was terrifying and unpleasant, because that's how we get better. I believe strongly it's how we get better. So I did. I never really became a good competitor. I mean, I won. Actually, I did. Years ago, I did win a few competitions, or a few bracket. Like it's a bracket. I'm competing against guys in the same general skill and same general size range as me. So it's not winning the championship. It's just you get a gold medal for your bracket. I've done that a couple of times. I've got a few gold medals floating around somewhere. I've got a few silvers, a few bronzes. I got a bronze. I got 1 bronze this weekend. Stuff like that. So, but coming back to the point here, which was the poise aspect, right? I did in fact achieve my one major goal for the weekend, which is I went in there and I rolled with the same poise almost all the time, not quite, but almost, same poise at the tournament that I do in the gym. And that's a big accomplishment. And I'm very happy for myself. And so I'm going to publicly acknowledge my own accolade here as far as having achieved that. And, a year from now, I'll look to compete again, and we'll see if I set a similar goal or if I set a new goal. So I appreciate you watching if you did. I know this is a little bit more all over the place and is a little bit more focused on this very jiu-jitsu specific thing, but I do think that there's some relevant lessons here in my experience that a person who has no idea, who's never heard the word jiu-jitsu before today, could still take from my experience. So I hope that it's been useful and meaningful. I am gonna probably go hop on the tractor here in a minute and do some farm work, but then after that, I would like to probably sit down again later today and do the next video in our Dreams into Action series. So look for that to come out maybe tonight or possibly tomorrow. And then, actually, I'll probably post it tomorrow even if I finish it today, but we'll see. Otherwise, I will continue to try to do sort of this combination of more focused stuff on the Dreams into Action until we are done with that series, which may take us another, 5 or 20 more videos. I'm kind of just doing it one step at a time. And then I will also keep doing stuff like this, where if there are things that I find relevant and interesting out in the world that I encounter, I'll sit down and I'll talk about them. As I mentioned maybe a few weeks ago, this sort of second phase of Aim at Excellence is really more about me sharing my experience, me sharing my lessons, and me sharing my stories, because I don't want to jump right into this role of guru. I think that it's very easy for us to speak with this very broad language of what we're actually telling people is what has worked for us, but what we're saying is this is what works. And I think those are two very distinct things. And I want to be careful with how I tell my stories so that people see what I'm telling is my story. I'm not trying to give them generic and broad advice. What I'm trying to give them is perspective. I'm trying to share my perspective so that a person can witness my perspective and then extract whatever is useful to them and apply it in their life. That's my goal, at least in the short term with Aim at Excellence, rather than trying to sit here and say, you should be doing blank because I say. That's not who I am personally, and I don't think that's appropriate anyway. And I think that the kinds of people who do that Well, let's just say that I don't want a person like that in my life. I'm not saying they're not valuable, but I don't want people to tell me this is the way. I want people to tell me, here's what I have done, draw your own conclusions, and make your own decisions. So I'm trying to set the example of what I need and want and appreciate in my own life. So I hope you find any of this interesting and useful. I appreciate you watching. I look forward to speaking with you again soon.